The crystalline spires of New Manhattan pierced the morning smog, their surfaces reflecting the weak sunlight that managed to filter through Earth's still recovering atmosphere. Logan Fletcher stood at his apartment window, coffee in hand, watching the morning traffic of hover cars weave between the towers. Another ordinary day in 2015-70, or so he thought. The knock at his door was so quiet he almost missed it. When he opened it, he found himself face to face with what appeared to be a hologram, a tall, translucent figure with silver skin and eyes like distant stars. Logan Fletcher? The being's voice resonated with an otherworldly timbre. I am Ambassador Krell of the Galactic Council. May I enter? Logan's coffee mug slipped from his fingers, shattering on the floor. In the 5 years since Earth had joined the Galactic Council, he'd never seen an alien up close, let alone had one at his door. Sure. Come in. He stepped aside, grimacing at the coffee pooling around his feet. Sorry about the mess. The ambassador glided into his modest apartment, somehow managing to look regal, even surrounded by Logan's scattered laundry in half-eaten takeout containers. I bring news of great importance regarding your grandfather, Edward Fletcher. My grandfather? Logan frowned. He disappeared on some crazy space expedition 20 years ago. Everyone assumed he was dead. Not dead, at least not until recently. Carell produced a small crystal that projected a holographic document. Your grandfather became a close friend and advisor to King Vorthak of Elantara, one of the most powerful kingdoms in the galaxy. Logan snorted. Elantara, the same ones who called Earth a primitive backwater populated by evolutionary mistakes last month? The very same. Carell's expression remained neutral. And now, due to your grandfather's influence, you have inherited a rather unique position in their royal court. What position? Guardian and future husband to the 4 princesses of Elantara. Logan stared at the ambassador for a long moment before bursting into laughter. Right. Good joke. Did Mike put you up to this? The hologram effects are impressive. This is no joke, Mr. Fletcher. The ambassador's voice grew sharp. King Vorthak is dead. His will explicitly names you as the guardian of his daughters and their intended consort. The stability of Earth's position in the Galactic Council may well depend on how you handle this responsibility. Logan's laughter died in his throat. You can't be serious. They hate humans. Everyone knows that. Perhaps that is precisely why the king made his choice. Carell extended a hand, offering a small metallic disc. You have 1 hour to pack before we depart for Elantara. Choose wisely what you bring. You may not return to Earth for quite some time. Logan took the disc with numb fingers. And if I refuse, then Earth loses its strongest potential ally in the galaxy, and the princess's enemies will use your rejection to further paint humanity as unworthy of galactic citizenship. Carell moved toward the door. 1 hour, Mr. Fletcher. I suggest you spend less of it standing there in shock and more of it packing. As the ambassador disappeared through his doorway, Logan looked down at the disc in his hand. It pulsed with a soft blue light, like a heartbeat. Well, he muttered to himself, at least it's not another boring Tuesday. The journey to Elantara passed in a blur of hyperspace jumps and diplomatic protocols. Logan spent most of it trying to memorize the cultural briefings Carell had provided, though his mind kept wandering to what awaited him. 4 princesses, a marriage arrangement, the fate of Earth's galactic standing. No pressure. When they finally emerged from the last jump, Logan pressed his face against the viewport, his breath catching at the sight before him. Elantara's capital planet hung in space like a jewel, its surface a swirling mass of purple oceans and crystalline continents that seemed to glow from within. Beautiful, isn't it? Carell appeared beside him. The Elantarans have spent millennia perfecting their world. They consider Earth's climate crisis proof of humanity's incompetence. Thanks for the pep talk, Logan muttered. Their ship descended through layers of iridescent clouds toward a city that made New Manhattan look like a collection of children's blocks. Towers of living crystal stretched miles into the sky, connected by bridges of pure light. Flying creatures that looked like a cross between whales and butterflies drifted between the spires. The royal palace rose from the center of the city like a frozen fountain, its surfaces refracting the light of three suns into rainbow cascades. As they landed on a floating platform near its base, Logan's stomach clenched with anxiety. "Remember," Carell said as they disembarked, "bow from the waist when introduced, maintain eye contact but don't stare, and whatever you do, don't comment on their enhanced genetic lineage." Their what? The Elanterans consider themselves the pinnacle of humanoid evolution. Any suggestion otherwise is considered deeply offensive. They were led through corridors that seemed to shift and breathe, the crystal walls pulsing with gentle light. Guards in armor that looked like liquid mercury watched their progress with expressions of barely concealed disdain. Finally, they reached a vast chamber whose ceiling opened to the violet sky. A group of figures stood on a raised dais at the far end, their silhouettes backlit by the streaming sunlight. "The royal princesses of Elantara," announced a voice that seemed to come from the walls themselves. Logan's first thought as they turned to face him was that the cultural briefings hadn't done them justice. They were tall, all over 6 feet, with an otherworldly grace that made them seem to float rather than walk. Their hair moved as if caught in a perpetual gentle breeze, despite the still air of the chamber. But it was their eyes that caught him off guard. The eldest princess, Alinea, stepped forward. Her movements were precise, controlled, every gesture screaming royal breeding. Her porcelain skin seemed to glow from within, marking her as distinctly non-human despite her otherwise familiar appearance. "So," she said, her voice melodious but cold, "this is the primitive creature our father chose to rule us." Logan bit back his initial response and bowed. "Your Highness, I assure you I have no intention of ruling anyone. I'm as surprised by this situation as you are." "Surprised?" The second princess, Serena, tilted her head. Her auburn hair caught the light like liquid copper. "What a quaint emotion. Tell me, do all humans wear such crude synthetic materials, or are you particularly underdressed?" Logan glanced down at his best suit, which suddenly felt about as sophisticated as a potato sack. "Oh, leave off the fashion criticism, Serena," said Xanthia, the third princess. She circled Logan like a predator, sizing up prey, her platinum blonde hair creating a halo effect around her face. "I'm more interested in how this specimen managed to convince our father he was worthy of such an honor. Did your grandfather teach you some particularly impressive tricks?" Before Logan could respond, the youngest princess, Tiaria, let out a musical laugh that somehow managed to sound like pure contempt. Her dark hair and olive skin contrasted sharply with her sister's lighter coloring. "Look at him!" He can barely string two words together. This must be father's idea of a final joke, leaving us in the care of a stunted ape. Logan straightened his spine, deciding he'd had enough of playing the meek Earth ambassador. "You know, if we're going to discuss evolution, I could point out that clinging to outdated prejudices isn't exactly a sign of advanced development." The chamber fell silent. Even the guards seemed to hold their breath. Alinea's silver-white eyes narrowed. "You dare?" "Yes, I dare." Logan met her gaze steadily. "Your father chose me for a reason. Maybe instead of making assumptions, you should consider that he might have known what he was doing." "Or perhaps," Xanthia interjected, sliding closer with predatory grace, "he finally lost his mind in his final days. It wouldn't be the first time a great king felt his senility." Tiaria snickered, but Serena shot her sister a sharp look. "Be careful, Xanthia. Those are dangerous words, even in jest." Logan watched the interaction with interest. There was tension between the sisters, subtle currents he hadn't expected. Alinea, in particular, seemed to bristle at Xanthia's comment about their father. "The will is clear," Carell interrupted smoothly. "By galactic law and Elantaran tradition, Mr. Fletcher is now your legal guardian and future consort. The ceremony of acceptance must be performed within 3 solar cycles, or the kingdom's standing in the Galactic Council will be compromised. 3 days. Logan hadn't been briefed on this detail. "What ceremony?" "A mere formality," Alinea said, her tone suggesting it was anything but. "You must simply prove yourself worthy through 3 traditional trials, assuming you survive them, of course." "Of course," Logan echoed dryly. "And I don't suppose anyone's going to tell me what these trials involve." Serena's lips curved in what might have been a smile or a sneer. Where would be the fun in that? The first trial begins at dawn, Alinea announced. Until then, you will be shown to your quarters. Try not to break anything. Primitive. As a pair of guards moved to escort him away, Logan caught Tyrea rolling her eyes. But beneath her show of disdain, he noticed something else. A flicker of curiosity, quickly masked. One more thing, he called over his shoulder. My grandfather. What happened to him? The sisters exchanged glances. It was Alinea who finally answered, her voice softer than before. He died protecting our father from assassination. He was brave for a human. Logan nodded, processing this new information as he followed the guards through the living crystal corridors. His grandfather had died a hero in an alien court, and now Logan had inherited not just his position, but his unfinished work. Whatever game the old king had been playing by choosing him, Logan was beginning to suspect it was far more complex than simple succession. In his assigned chambers, a suite that would have put Earth's finest hotels to shame, Logan sank into a chair that seemed to form itself around him. Through the transparent walls, he watched the three sons of Alintara begin their descent, painting the crystalline city in shades of gold and purple. Well, Grandpa, he murmured, you certainly left me one hell of a mess to clean up. A soft chime interrupted his thoughts. A holographic message flickered to life before him. First trial, the challenge of mind. Dawn, Great Hall, come unarmed. Logan smiled grimly. Right, because I'm sure this won't be a trap at all. Logan spent the evening studying the layout of his chambers, testing the strange technology, and trying to figure out if anything could be used to his advantage tomorrow. The bathroom alone was a maze of crystal panels and floating lights that had taken him 20 minutes to decipher. A soft knock at his door interrupted his exploration. When it slid open with a musical chime, he found Princess Xanthia leaning against the doorframe, her silver eyes glowing in the dimmed evening light. Enjoying your last night of comfort? She asked, sauntering in without waiting for an invitation. She wore something that looked like flowing quicksilver, the fabric clinging and shifting with each movement. If you're here to intimidate me, you might want to work on your threatening stance, Logan said, noting how she positioned herself to best catch the light. The catwalk pose somewhat undermines the menace. Her laugh was surprisingly genuine. Oh, you're sharper than you look, Earthling. She prowled closer, and Logan caught a scent like starlight and spice. I came to satisfy my curiosity. Father was not known for making foolish choices, yet here you are, apparently neither foolish nor particularly impressive. A puzzle. Maybe he just had a better sense of humor than his daughters. Careful, she purred, now close enough that he could see the galaxy patterns swirling in her eyes. That sharp tongue might get you into trouble. I thought you liked puzzles. She reached out, trailing a finger along his jaw. Her touch left a tingling sensation in its wake. Perhaps I do, but tomorrow's trial, well, let's just say even the cleverest puzzle can be broken if you apply enough pressure. Logan caught her wrist gently. Is this part of the test? The seductive warning? The mysterious threat? Xanthia's eyes widened fractionally, the first genuine reaction he'd seen from her. Then she smiled, slow and dangerous. You really aren't what I expected. I get that a lot. She withdrew her hand but didn't step back. Tell me, Logan Fletcher, what do you hope to gain from all this? Power? Wealth? The prestige of being consort to the most advanced civilization in the galaxy? Would you believe me if I said I just want to figure out why my grandfather thought this was a good idea? No. Then I won't bother trying to convince you. He matched her smile with one of his own. Though I have to wonder why you're really here, Your Highness. Surely you have better things to do than interrogate a primitive ape. A chime echoed through the chambers, some kind of evening signal. Xanthia stepped away, but her eyes lingered on him with newfound interest. Sweet dreams, Earthling, she said as she moved to the door. Try not to die too quickly tomorrow. You're proving far more entertaining than I anticipated. After she left, Logan let out a long breath. Well, he muttered to himself, that was either flirting or a death threat, possibly both. He was about to return to his exploration when another knock came at the door. This time it was Serena, clutching what appeared to be an ancient book. "I thought you might want this," she said stiffly, thrusting the volume at him. "It's a history of the trials. Father, Father used to say knowledge was the best defense." Before Logan could thank her, she hurried away, leaving him holding a book that felt warm to the touch and smelled of stardust. The night was apparently full of surprises. Logan settled into a peculiar floating chair with the book Serena had brought. The pages seemed to shift and move under his fingers, the text rearranging itself into Earth Standard as he read. He was deep in a chapter about historical trial casualties when yet another knock interrupted him. This time it was Tiaria, the youngest princess, who practically stormed into his chamber. "My sisters are idiots," she announced, pacing the room like a caged predator. "Xanthia thinks she's being clever with her seduction games, and Serena's trying to ease her conscience with that dusty old book." Logan marked his place carefully. "And you're here because I want to make something clear." She spun to face him, her dark hair whipping around dramatically. "I don't care what Father wrote in his will. I won't be bound to some backward planet's mail just because of tradition. Funny, I don't remember proposing." Her eyes flashed. "You think this is a joke?" "I think you're trying very hard to convince yourself you hate me." Logan stood, matching her directness. "Want to tell me what's really bothering you?" Tiaria's step faltered. For a moment, her carefully maintained mask of disdain cracked, revealing something vulnerable underneath. Then it snapped back into place. "You'll fail tomorrow," she said, but her voice lacked its earlier venom. "Everyone does. Father made sure the trials were impossible. Yet here you are, warning me." "I'm not warning you," she snapped, but a flush crept up her neck. "I'm gloating. In advance." "Of course you are." Logan moved closer, noting how she didn't step back. "Just like you came here purely to insult me, not because you're curious about the human your father chose." They stood mere inches apart now. Tiaria had to tilt her head down slightly to meet his gaze, but the height difference didn't seem to matter anymore. "You're infuriating," she whispered. "So I've been told." For a heartbeat, something electric crackled between them. Then Tiaria seemed to remember herself. She backed away quickly, almost tripping over her elaborate robes. Just die with dignity tomorrow, Earthling. It's the least you can do." She fled before he could respond, leaving Logan to wonder if all his interactions with the princesses would be this dramatic. As if summoned by the thought, the door chimed one final time. Logan wasn't entirely surprised to find Alinea, the eldest, standing there with perfect posture and an unreadable expression. "My sisters have been here," she stated. It wasn't a question. Word travels fast. "The palace has eyes everywhere." She entered with measured steps, her presence somehow making the room feel both smaller and more formal. "I should warn you that playing them against each other won't work." "I'm not playing anyone," Logan said. "They came to me, remember?" Alinea studied him with those unsettling silver eyes. "You're different than I expected." "I get that a lot, too." "Stop that." "Stop what?" "Being," she gestured vaguely, "disarming. It's inappropriate." Logan couldn't help but smile. "Would you prefer if I cowered in fear, Your Highness?" "Yes," she said, but the corner of her mouth twitched. "It would make this much simpler." "And what exactly is this?" Logan asked, watching as Alinea moved to the window, her profile striking against the violet twilight sky. "This situation, the trials, the will." She turned back to him, and for the first time, he saw the weight of responsibility in her bearing. "You must understand. My father's death has left us vulnerable. The noble houses circle like vultures, and now we're meant to accept an earthling as our guardian. I didn't ask for this position, yet here you are." She moved closer, her presence commanding even in stillness. "Tell me truthfully, can you protect them?" "My sisters? Because if you can't—" "Is that concern I hear, Your Highness? For the primitive earthling?" "For my kingdom," she corrected sharply, but her eyes betrayed her uncertainty. "The trials tomorrow, they're not just tests of worth, they're deadly serious. Our enemies will be watching, waiting for any sign of weakness. Logan closed the distance between them, noting how she tensed but didn't retreat. Then maybe it's time to stop seeing me as an enemy and start considering me an ally. Their eyes locked, silver meeting brown, and something unspoken passed between them. After a long moment, Alinea nodded slightly. Perhaps, she whispered, then seemed to catch herself. Straightening, she resumed her regal bearing. Dawn comes early here. You should rest. As she reached the door, she paused. Logan. Yes. If you survive tomorrow, we should talk more about my father's real intentions. The door closed behind her with a musical chime, leaving Logan alone with his thoughts in the approaching dawn. Through his window, he could see all three suns beginning their slow rise, painting the crystal city in shades of gold and rose. In just a few hours, he would face the first trial. 4 princesses had visited him, each with their own agenda, their own mysteries. His grandfather had died protecting their father, and now Logan stood at the center of what was clearly a much larger game. Well, he muttered, watching the alien sunrise, at least it beats another boring day at the office. The final sun crested the horizon, its light catching the crystal towers and exploding into rainbow cascades. Somewhere in the palace, a bell began to toll, announcing the beginning of the trial day. Logan straightened his Earth-made suit, smiled grimly at his reflection, and headed for the door. Whatever challenges awaited him, whatever political intrigue or deadly tests, he had a feeling his life had just become infinitely more interesting. And maybe, just maybe, that's exactly what his grandfather had intended all along. The Great Hall of Trials loomed before Logan, its crystal walls stretching so high they seemed to pierce the violet morning sky. Guards lined the path, their armor reflecting the 3 suns' light in dazzling patterns. The 4 princesses waited at the far end, seated on floating thrones that hummed with energy. The first trial begins, announced a disembodied voice, the challenge of mind. Logan approached the center of the hall, where a single pedestal rose from the floor. On it sat what looked like a mercury sphere, its surface rippling with complex patterns. The sphere of truth, Alinea explained, her voice echoing. It will test your mental defenses and judgment. Few survive its probing. Comforting, Logan muttered. He reached for the sphere, but Xanthia's voice cut through the air. Wait. She leaned forward, her eyes glinting. Shouldn't we explain what happens if he fails? Tiaria smirked. Where's the fun in that? But Serena spoke up, her voice soft but clear. The sphere can break minds, Earthman. Are you certain you wish to proceed? Logan met each of their gazes in turn, noting the different expressions. Alinea's carefully masked concern, Xanthia's predatory interest, Tiaria's forced disdain, and Serena's quiet apprehension. Ladies, he said, grasping the sphere, you really need to work on your pep talks. The moment his fingers touched the mercury surface, the world dissolved into light. He found himself floating in what seemed to be deep space, surrounded by stars and nebulae. 4 paths stretched before him, each leading to a different scene. The first showed Earth, but ravaged by war and destruction. A voice whispered, choose this path, and will grant Earth protection from all enemies. The second revealed the princesses in chains, their kingdom fallen. Choose this path, and you'll rule Elantara alone, answering to no one. The third displayed infinite knowledge, secrets of the universe unfolding like flowers. Choose this path, and you'll surpass even the Elantarans in wisdom. The fourth path showed nothing at all, just darkness. Logan smiled. Nice try, he said to the void. But there's a 5th option you're not showing me. The space around him shimmered. Explain, demanded multiple voices. You're testing whether I'll sacrifice my principles for power, betray the princesses for Earth, choose knowledge over responsibility, or admit defeat. He crossed his arms. But my grandfather didn't die protecting the king just to have his grandson fail a simple loyalty test. The void rippled. Then what is your choice? I choose to make my own path, one where Earth and Elantara prosper together, where the princesses rule as they should, and where knowledge is earned, not given. There was a long silence. Then the space around him began to crack, light pouring through the fissures. Logan blinked, finding himself back in the Great Hall. The sphere in his hands had turned to crystal, clear as glass. "Impossible," breathed one of the noble observers. "He broke the pattern." Logan looked up to find all four princesses staring at him with varying degrees of shock. Xanthia was the first to recover, her lips curving into an appreciative smile. "Well, well," she purred. "Perhaps we underestimated our little Earthman." Before anyone could respond further, an explosion rocked the Great Hall. Crystalline shards rained from the ceiling as smoke filled the chamber. Through the chaos, Logan caught glimpses of masked figures rappelling down from above. "Assassins!" Alinia's voice cut through the confusion. She rose from her throne, energy crackling around her hands. Logan didn't hesitate. He sprinted toward the princesses, dodging energy blasts and falling debris. Xanthia had already engaged two attackers, her movements fluid and deadly. Tiaria stood back-to-back with Serena, both wielding what looked like light blades. "Your Highnesses," Logan called out. "The sphere, it's a shield." He held up the crystal sphere, which was beginning to pulse with protective energy. "Clever boy," Xanthia laughed, ducking under an assassin's blade. "But can you reach us in time?" Logan weaved through the battle, keeping the sphere raised. An attacker lunged at him with an energy blade, but he spun away, using the momentum to throw the man into a crystal pillar. Years of Earth martial arts training were finally proving useful. "Behind you!" Tiaria's warning came just in time. Logan dropped and rolled, feeling heat pass over his head as an energy blast missed him by inches. He came up next to Alinia, who was holding off three attackers with graceful sweeps of energy. "Impressive moves for a primitive," she said, a hint of a smile playing at her lips despite the danger. "You should see me dance," Logan quipped, raising the sphere to deflect another blast. The crystal caught the energy and dispersed it in a rainbow cascade. Xanthia materialized beside them, her hair wild and eyes bright with battle lust. "If you two are done flirting, we have a situation." She nodded toward where more attackers were pouring in through the breach in the ceiling. "The shield generators," Serena called out, her usual dreamy demeanor replaced by fierce focus. "We need to reach the control room." "Cover me," Logan said, already moving. "I have an idea." "Always with the ideas," Tiaria grumbled, but she fell in beside him, her light blade humming. "Try not to die before I get the chance to kill you myself." They fought their way across the hall, the princesses moving with deadly grace while Logan used the sphere to protect their flanks. He couldn't help noticing how they unconsciously adjusted to work with him, as if they'd trained together for years instead of meeting just yesterday. "The control room's there," Alinia pointed to an alcove high above them, "but the lift's been destroyed." Logan studied the crystalline walls, then grinned. "Who needs a lift?" He placed the sphere against the wall, and the crystal began to resonate, creating steps that spiraled upward. "Show off," Xanthia purred, but her eyes sparkled with approval. As they ascended, Logan found himself sandwiched between Tiaria and Serena, their bodies pressed close on the narrow crystal steps. "If you're using this as an excuse to get close to us," Tiaria whispered in his ear, her breath warm, "it's both obvious and moderately clever." "Only moderately?" Logan asked, helping Serena over a particularly treacherous step. "Don't encourage him," Serena murmured, but her hand lingered in his longer than necessary. At the top of the spiral, they found themselves in a circular chamber filled with pulsing crystals. Alinia immediately moved to the central console, her fingers dancing over the controls. "The shield system's been sabotaged," she announced, frustration evident in her voice. "Someone with inside knowledge did this." "House Vendral," Xanthia spat the name like a curse. "They've always resented Father's reforms." Logan studied the alien technology, noticing patterns similar to the test sphere. "The crystals respond to intention and truth," he mused. "Maybe we don't need the traditional controls." He placed the sphere in the center of the console. It began to resonate with the chamber's crystals, creating harmonics that made the air shimmer. "That's not possible," Serena breathed, moving closer. "You're interfacing with our technology as if you were Elin Taran." Maybe your father saw something in humans that you missed, Logan said, concentrating on the energy patterns. The sphere pulsed brighter, and suddenly shields of pure energy cascaded down the palace walls. Tiaria leaned against his shoulder, watching the attackers below scatter. Don't get cocky, Earthling, though I suppose you've earned a little smugness. Coming from you, that's practically a marriage proposal, Logan teased. In your dreams, she shot back, but her cheeks flushed slightly. If you two are quite finished, Alinea cut in, though Logan caught the hint of amusement in her voice. We need to discuss how the assassins got past our defenses in the first place. Xanthia prowled the chamber's perimeter, her movements predatory. More importantly, why attack during the trials? Unless ... She turned to Logan, eyes narrowing. They weren't after us at all. They were after you. Me? Why would anyone? Logan stopped as realization hit. The will. If I die before completing the trials, the kingdom would be vulnerable to outside control, Alinea finished, and Earth would lose its chance at a stronger alliance. Serena touched one of the crystals, sending ripples of light through the chamber. Then we protect him, she said simply. When the others stared at her, she shrugged. He's proven himself cleverer than we thought. And, she glanced at Logan, a small smile playing at her lips. He's not entirely unpleasant to look at. High praise indeed, Logan laughed, then sobered. But we need to find out who's really behind this. House Vendral might be the weapon, but someone else is doing the aiming. Alinea swept across the chamber, her bearing regal despite the recent battle. Agreed, and we need to prepare for the second trial. Our enemies won't expect you to continue so soon after an assassination attempt. Unless that's exactly what they expect, Xanthia mused, moving closer to Logan. We could use that. Use what exactly? Logan asked, acutely aware of how Xanthia's proximity sent tingles down his spine. Their assumptions about you, about humans, she purred. They think you're predictable, weak, but you've already proven otherwise. Her finger traced a pattern on his chest. Why not let them keep underestimating you? Tiaria rolled her eyes. If you're done seducing the Earthling, sister, we have actual planning to do. Jealous, Xanthia teased. Please, Tiaria scoffed. But Logan noticed she wouldn't meet his eyes. Serena interrupted the brewing sisterly spat. The second trial is traditionally the challenge of heart, she said softly. It's designed to test emotional strength and judgment. Wonderful, Logan muttered, because the mind-reading sphere wasn't invasive enough. The challenge of heart is different, Alinea explained, her voice unexpectedly gentle. It forces you to face your deepest fears and desires. Many have gone mad from what they've seen. You say the sweetest things, Your Highness. This isn't a joke, she snapped, but there was concern beneath her anger. You need to prepare. Another explosion rocked the palace, this one more distant but powerful enough to make the crystals sing. Secondary attack, Xanthia said grimly. They're testing the new shields. Logan studied the energy patterns flowing through the chamber. These controls, they're meant to be used by all of you together, aren't they? That's why they've been failing. You're supposed to work in harmony. The princesses exchanged looks of surprise. How did you know that? Serena asked. Because your father was trying to teach you something, Logan said. The same thing he's trying to teach you with me. Sometimes strength comes from unexpected places and unexpected alliances. A moment of silence followed his words. Then Alinea stepped forward, her expression determined. Very well, she said. Show us how to synchronize the shields. But after that, a small smile curved her lips. We need to prepare you for the challenge of heart. And I warn you, Earthman, we can be very thorough teachers. The next few days brought a whirlwind of cultural clashes and unexpected connections. Logan found himself navigating the complex web of Elantaran customs while preparing for the second trial. One evening, he discovered Tiaria hiding in the palace gardens, frustration evident in her rigid posture. Another traditional dance lesson? He asked, recognizing the formal attire she wore. 12 steps, perfect posture, and absolutely no joy allowed, she muttered. How are we supposed to be superior beings if we can't even dance properly? Logan glanced at the 3 moons overhead, an idea forming. Want to learn how humans dance? What, stumbling around like primitives? But curiosity flickered in her eyes. He pulled out his personal device, selecting an old Earth song. The melody floated through the garden, soft and mysterious. No steps to memorize, he said, offering his hand. Just feel the music. Tiaria hesitated, then took his hand. If anyone sees us, they'll be scandalized by your terrible taste in dance partners. He pulled her close, guiding her in a simple sway. At first she was stiff, overthinking every movement, but gradually as the music continued, she began to relax. This is, not entirely horrible, she admitted, her head resting against his shoulder. High praise indeed, Logan chuckled. Shut up and dance, Earthling. They moved together under the alien stars, and for a moment, all the politics and danger faded away. When Tiaria finally pulled back, her eyes were soft with wonder. I never knew. She started, then caught herself. Well, I suppose humans aren't completely useless after all. I'll take that as a thank you. The next morning, Logan found Serena in her private studio, surrounded by holographic artworks that took his breath away. Landscapes of worlds he'd never seen, portraits that captured not just appearances, but emotions. These are incredible, he said honestly. Why haven't I seen them displayed in the palace? Serena flinched, her hands moving to hide her latest work. Art is not considered a proper pursuit for a princess of Elentara. We're supposed to appreciate beauty, not create it. Logan studied one of the portraits, a scene of Earth's oceans, rendered with surprising accuracy. That's the most ridiculous thing I've ever heard. Your work deserves to be seen. By whom? The nobles who think we're superior to everyone? The other worlds who already resent us? By anyone who wants to understand your perspective. He gestured to the Earth scene. Look at this. You've captured something true about my world, even though you've never been there. That's what art does. It builds bridges. Serena's fingers traced the holographic waves of her Earth ocean. You really think others would want to see, to understand? I know they would. Logan moved closer, watching the play of emotions across her face. Your art shows a side of Elentara that most people never get to see. The beauty, the humanity, yes, humanity, beneath all the ceremony. She looked up at him, her galaxy eyes swirling with possibility. Perhaps a small exhibition in the lower gardens? Why not start with the main gallery? Go big or go home, as we say on Earth. A small smile curved her lips. You're a terrible influence, Logan Fletcher. So I've been told. Later that day, Logan found himself in an unexpected chess match with Xanthia. The pieces were crystal constructs that moved in 3 dimensions, making Earth chess look primitive in comparison. Your move, Earthman, she purred, lounging in her chair with predatory grace. Though I should warn you, I've never lost a match. Logan studied the board, noting patterns that reminded him of the shield controls. There's a first time for everything. Confident, aren't we? She leaned forward, her scent like stardust and spice. Care to make it interesting? What did you have in mind? If I win, you tell me what you're really doing here. No clever deflections, no charming evasions. And if I win, her smile was dangerous. Then I'll tell you a secret about my father's death that none of my sisters know. Logan moved a piece, watching her eyes widen slightly as she recognized the strategy. Deal. The game lasted hours, drawing a crowd of noble observers. Xanthia's initial amusement turned to intense concentration as Logan matched her move for move. Finally, with a move that combined Earth chess tactics with Elantaran principles, he cornered her queen equivalent. Impossible, she breathed, studying the board from all angles. Then she threw back her head and laughed. Oh, you are full of surprises, aren't you? Do I get my secret now? Xanthia's expression turned serious. The night before he died, Father told me to watch you closely. Not to protect you, but to learn from you. She stood, trailing her fingers across his shoulders as she passed. I'm beginning to understand why. As she left, Logan caught sight of Alinea in the doorway. She'd clearly witnessed the entire match. Impressive, she said, entering the now empty room. Few can match Xanthia at strategy games. Maybe she's not as unbeatable as she thinks. Or maybe, Alinea moved closer, her presence making his pulse quicken. You're not as simple as we thought. The evening before the second trial, Logan found Alinea alone in the palace observatory. The chamber's crystal dome opened to the stars, casting her an ethereal light. "Couldn't sleep?" he asked, joining her at the viewing platform. "I was studying the alignment of the moons," she said, but her voice lacked its usual authoritative edge. "Tomorrow's trial, you're worried. I'm concerned about the kingdom's stability." But she wouldn't meet his eyes. "Just the kingdom?" Alinea turned to face him, her composure cracking slightly. "You don't understand. We can't." Before she could finish, alarms blared through the palace. Red light flooded the observatory. "Breach in the lower levels," a guard's voice crackled through the communication system. "Princess Serena's quarters have been compromised." They raced through the crystal corridors, meeting Xanthia and Tiaria on the way. When they reached Serena's chambers, they found signs of struggle and a holographic message floating in the air. "The true heir will rise," the message read. "Come alone to the crystal caves, Earthman, or the artistic princess dies." "It's a trap," Xanthia snarled. "Obviously," Logan agreed, "but they don't know about the sphere's connection to the palace systems." He pulled out the crystal sphere from the first trial. "I can track her." "You can't go alone," Alinea protested, grabbing his arm. For once, her touch wasn't formal or distant. "We don't have a choice. They'll kill her if they see you coming." Logan met each princess's gaze. "Trust me." Tiaria stepped forward. "If you die saving her, I'll never forgive you." "I'll try to keep that in mind." The crystal caves stretched beneath the palace, a maze of glowing formations. Logan followed the sphere's pulses, feeling Serena's presence growing stronger. Finally, he heard voices echoing through the crystals. "Your Earthman has 10 more minutes," a cold voice said. "Then we send your father's precious alliance back to him, piece by piece." Logan peered around a crystal formation. Serena was bound to a crystal pillar, surrounded by figures in House Vendrell colors. But something about their positioning seemed off. Using the sphere's connection to the palace systems, Logan sent a subtle pulse through the crystals. As he suspected, half the guards were holograms. House Vendrell didn't have enough loyal soldiers for a full operation. "Looking for someone?" he called out, stepping into view. "The Earthman arrives," the leader sneered. "Drop your weapons and surrender." "Funny thing about Elantaran crystals," Logan said, moving closer. "They're incredibly responsive to truth." He raised the sphere, sending a burst of energy that disrupted the holographic guards, leaving only 4 real opponents. "Logan, don't!" Serena cried out. "They have—" An energy blast caught him in the shoulder, spinning him around. Pain lanced through his body, but he managed to maintain his grip on the sphere. "Primitive fool," the leader laughed. "Did you think we wouldn't be prepared for your tricks?" Logan smiled through the pain. "Actually, I was counting on it." The sphere pulsed, and suddenly the cave crystals began to sing. The same harmony he'd created with the shield controls. The vibrations grew until the fake crystals hiding more attackers shattered, revealing the full ambush team. "Now, sisters!" Logan shouted. The cave erupted in chaos as the princesses emerged from hiding spots he'd carefully arranged through the sphere's connection. Alinea and Xanthia attacked from above, while Tiaria seemed to materialize from the shadows themselves. But the leader wasn't finished. He grabbed Serena, pressing an energy blade to her throat. "One more move and she dies." Logan didn't hesitate. He threw himself forward, knocking Serena free as the blade sliced deep into his side. They tumbled together behind a crystal formation as energy blasts filled the air. "You're hurt," Serena gasped, her hands pressing against his wound. "Worth it," Logan managed through gritted teeth. "Your art exhibition? Wouldn't want to miss it." The battle ended quickly after that. Between the 3 princesses' fury and the palace guards finally arriving, House Vendrell's forces were overwhelmed. Logan drifted in and out of consciousness as he was rushed to the medical chamber. Through the haze of pain, he caught fragments of conversations. "Fool could have died. Saved her without thinking. Just like grandfather. Changed everything." When he finally awoke, he found all 4 princesses by his bedside. Their usual masks of superiority were gone, replaced by something far more vulnerable. "You could have died," Alinea said softly. "Couldn't let them ruin the alliance," Logan mumbled. The alliance. Tiaria's laugh was watery. You didn't even think about politics, did you? You just couldn't bear to see her hurt. Guilty as charged. Xanthia leaned close, her eyes intense. You've made things very complicated, Earthman. How so? Because now, Serena said, taking his hand, we have to admit that we might actually care what happens to you. And that, Alinea finished, her voice thick with emotion, changes everything. The medical chamber fell silent except for the hum of healing crystals. Outside, the three suns began to set, painting the room in shades of gold and violet. Tomorrow would bring the final trial, more dangers, more palace intrigue. But for now, looking at the four faces around him, faces that no longer held disdain or mockery, but something far more interesting, Logan knew his grandfather had been right all along. Sometimes the greatest adventures came from the most unexpected inheritances. Recovery proved more challenging than any trial. Not because of the wound. Elin Terran healing technology worked miracles. But because of the four princesses who'd apparently decided he couldn't be left alone for more than 5 minutes. I'm fine, Logan insisted as Xanthia adjusted his healing crystals for the third time that hour. The medical I said I could walk. The medical AI doesn't know how stubborn Earthmen can be, she replied, but her usual sharp tone held unexpected warmth. Tiaria burst into the chamber, her face flushed. The Galactic Council representatives have arrived early. They're demanding an immediate audience. Let them wait, Xanthia said. But Alinea appeared in the doorway, her expression grave. We can't. They're threatening to revoke our autonomous status. She met Logan's eyes. They say a kingdom that can't prevent internal assassination attempts is too unstable to maintain independence. Logan swung his legs off the medical bed, ignoring the protest in his side. Then we'll show them how stable we can be. We? Serena asked softly. She'd been quietly sketching in the corner, capturing the play of light through the healing crystals. Well, I did inherit some responsibility here, didn't I? Before anyone could respond, Tiaria stepped forward, her usual masks of disdain and rebellion completely gone. Logan, that is, when you were hurt, I realized. She took a deep breath. I care for you, more than I should, more than makes any sense. The chamber fell silent. Logan felt the weight of multiple gazes. Xanthia's calculating, Serena's curious, and Alinea's. Was that jealousy? Tiaria, he started, but she pressed on. I know it's complicated. I know there are politics and traditions and 1,000 reasons why this is impossible. But watching you nearly die to save Serena, I can't pretend anymore. Well, Xanthia drawled, though her light tone seemed forced. This should make the council meeting interesting. Alinea stepped forward, her regal bearing at odds with the emotion in her voice. If we're being honest, sister, you're not the only one who's developed unexpected feelings. Logan looked between the princesses, his heart racing. You know, when your father arranged this inheritance, I don't think even he expected this particular outcome. Oh, I wouldn't be so sure, Xanthia purred, moving closer. Father was always playing a deeper game than anyone realized. Serena set aside her sketching, her galaxy eyes swirling with intensity. He knew we needed someone who would see us as people, not just princesses. Someone who would challenge us, protect us, make us laugh. Someone who would teach us to dance under the stars, Tiaria added softly. And risk everything to save one of us, Xanthia continued. Someone, Alinea finished, her voice barely a whisper, who would make us question everything we thought we knew about duty and desire. Logan stood carefully, aware of how the air seemed to crackle with tension. Ladies, while this is definitely the most interesting medical recovery I've ever had, the chamber door burst open, interrupting what promised to be either a very complicated conversation or a very interesting diplomatic incident. A palace guard rushed in, looking panicked. Your Highnesses, the council representatives, they're calling for an immediate vote on Elantara's status. They say the recent attacks prove the kingdom is failing. Alinea's expression hardened into the mask of authority Logan had first seen, but now he could see the fear behind it. How long do we have? They're assembling now, minutes at most. Logan straightened, ignoring the twinge in his side. Well then, let's go prove them wrong. You can barely walk, Tiaria protested. Then I'll lean on all of you. He offered his arms to the nearest princesses. After all, isn't that what this whole inheritance thing was about? Learning to work together? Xanthia laughed, a genuine sound of delight. Oh, you are dangerous, Earthman, using our own traditions against us? The group made their way to the Grand Council chamber. Logan supported between Xanthia and Tiaria, while Alinea and Serena flanked them protectively. The sight of the four princesses voluntarily touching a human caused a ripple of shocked whispers through the gathered nobles. The council representatives, beings from a dozen different worlds, sat on floating platforms arranged in a semicircle. Their expressions ranged from disdain to curiosity. "What is the meaning of this?" the lead council member demanded. "The human should be in medical isolation." "The human," Alinea declared, her voice ringing through the chamber, "is our chosen consort and guardian, and he will speak for Elantara." More whispers, louder now. Logan stepped forward, carefully hiding his discomfort. "Honored council," he began, "you see before you what you consider a paradox, an earthling standing as equal to the princesses of Elantara. But isn't that exactly what the Galactic Alliance should represent?" "Pretty word," another council member scoffed. "But the attacks were handled," Logan interrupted. "Not by me alone, but by all of us working together. The princesses could have let me die. Instead, they fought beside me, protected me, just as I protected them." He felt Tiaria's hand slip into his, followed by Serena's on his other side. Xanthia and Alinea stepped closer, their presence lending him strength. "Look at us," he continued. "The supposedly primitive human and the allegedly superior Elantarans. We've learned from each other, grown stronger together. Isn't that worth more than ancient prejudices?" "And what of succession?" a third council member asked. "The laws, Alinea cut in, require adaptation as our universe grows. My father knew this. It's why he chose Logan, not to rule us, but to help us rule better." "Besides," Xanthia added with a predatory smile, "who says we can't all share?" The council chamber erupted in shocked gasps and hurried conversations. Logan felt Tiaria trying to suppress her laughter against his shoulder. "You're enjoying this, aren't you?" she whispered. "Maybe a little," he admitted, "though I'm pretty sure this isn't what the cultural exchange program had in mind." The council representatives huddled together in urgent discussion while the chamber buzzed with speculation. Logan felt Alinea tense beside him. "Whatever they decide," she said softly, "I want you to know. The council has reached a decision," the lead representative announced. Everyone held their breath. Logan squeezed the hands holding his. "The unique arrangement presented here today demonstrates an unprecedented level of cooperation between Earth and Elantara. While unconventional, we cannot deny its effectiveness." The representative paused. "The council recognizes the legitimacy of this new form of governance, provided all parties agree." "Oh, we agree," Xanthia purred, her hand trailing up Logan's arm. "Most enthusiastically," Serena added with a shy smile. Tiaria didn't speak, but her grip on Logan's hand tightened meaningfully. All eyes turned to Alinea. As the eldest, her word carried the most weight. She stepped forward, every inch the future queen, but when she turned to Logan, her eyes held something far more personal than royal authority. "I have spent my life believing that duty and desire could never align," she said, her voice carrying through the silent chamber. "I was wrong," she faced the council. "On behalf of Elantara, I accept this arrangement. All of it." The chamber erupted in cheers. Whether from genuine support or political expedience, Logan couldn't tell. But he had more immediate concerns, like the fact that four princesses were looking at him with increasingly predatory expressions. "So," he said, trying to maintain some dignity while still basically being held upright by various royal hands, "what happens now?" "Now," Xanthia smiled, "we plan a coronation, unless you're having second thoughts?" "About becoming the first human consort to four alien princesses who initially wanted me dead? Why would I have second thoughts about that?" Tiaria laughed. "He's still trying to be clever. Should we show him what happens to clever Earthmen who talk too much?" The coronation ceremony transformed the Crystal Palace into something out of a dream. Light cascaded through the living walls in rainbow waves, while anti-gravity platforms held thousands of guests from across the galaxy. Logan stood before the assembled dignitaries in ceremonial robes that blended Earth formal wear with Elenteran crystal tech. Each princess approached him in turn, performing the ancient rituals with modern twists. "From this day forward," Alina declared, her voice ringing with authority and something warmer, "we forge a new path, not as separate worlds, but as one united future." "Where wisdom comes from unexpected places," Serena added, her artist soul evident in how she designed the ceremony's visual elements. "And strength is found in our differences," Xanthia continued, her predatory grace somehow perfectly suited to the formal occasion. "Creating something entirely new," Tiaria finished, no trace of her former rebellion in her voice. Just certainty. Later in the palace gardens under the twin moons, Logan found a moment of quiet. The celebrations continued inside, but here there was just the sound of crystal wind chimes and distant music. "Hiding from your own coronation?" Alinia's voice carried a hint of amusement as she joined him. "Taking a moment to process becoming the first human consort to 4 alien princesses. It's been an interesting month." She laughed. A real laugh, not the controlled royal chuckle she'd once used. "Interesting is one word for it." She moved closer, all pretense of formal distance gone. "Do you regret any of it?" "Let me think," Logan pretended to consider. "Being named guardian to 4 princesses who hated me, surviving assassination attempts, changing centuries of tradition, and somehow ending up here?" He smiled. Not for a second. Alinia's eyes softened. For once, she wasn't the eldest princess or the future queen, just a woman looking at the man who'd turned her world upside down. "You know, I never thought I'd say this to a human, but—" Logan kissed her, cutting off whatever diplomatic phrase she'd planned. After a moment of surprise, she melted into it, the last of her Ice Queen facade dissolving completely. From a nearby balcony came the sound of playful arguing. "That's not fair," Tiaria's voice drifted down. "Alinia always gets the first dance." "She is the eldest," Serena pointed out reasonably. "Besides," Xanthia added with audible amusement, "we have plenty of time to teach our Earthman all sorts of dances." Logan broke the kiss laughing. "I think your sisters are getting impatient." "Let them wait," Alinia murmured, pulling him back. "I've spent enough time putting duty first." Above them, the twin moons painted the crystal gardens in silver light. Inside, the celebration of their new united kingdom continued, and somewhere Logan was sure his grandfather was laughing at how perfectly his inheritance plan had worked out. Sometimes the greatest adventures and greatest loves came from the most unexpected places. Dear listeners, what an incredible journey we've shared together. From cold disdain to blazing romance, from political intrigue to heartfelt connections. This tale of Logan and his 4 alien princesses has been quite the adventure. I'd love to hear your thoughts. Which princess captured your imagination the most? Was it Alinia with her Ice Queen facade hiding deeper feelings? Xanthia's predatory grace and clever mind games? Serena's artistic soul and hidden depths? Or Tiaria's fiery spirit and gradual softening? Did you spot the moment when the princesses started falling for our Earth hero? Which scenes made you smile, laugh, or hold your breath in suspense? Your perspective would add another fascinating dimension to this story of culture clashes, unexpected love, and the power of breaking down prejudices. What would you have done in Logan's position? Could you resist the charms of 4 alien princesses who initially thought you were beneath them? Drop a comment below. I'm genuinely curious about what resonated with you in this tale of how love can bridge even interstellar differences. Looking forward to hearing your thoughts and engaging in conversation about this story that blends romance, sci-fi, and the timeless theme of how the heart knows no boundaries, even galactic ones. Share your favorite moments, predictions you had while listening, or even what you think happens next in this new United Kingdom. Let's keep the story alive through discussion.